Hi, everybody. This is Sarika from Fable Street, and we've come back to yet another episode of FS Changemakers. And as all, we've had awesome women so far as a part of FS Changemakers, we have another phenomenal person with us, which is Priya Patankar. Priya heads communications for PhonePe, and she's responsible currently for all external communication and CRM for PhonePe. She's worn multiple hats. She's been across industries, has worked over Priya for how long? More than about 18, 20 odd years?
21 years now, Sarika.
21 years, yeah, a long time.
Yes.
And so her experience is very diverse and very intense, and it's been across multiple industries like fintech, there's been e-commerce, there's online education, there's pharma, and there's been technology. So we will spend some time getting to know Priya personally and professionally, and get her thoughts and opinions on just how she manages everything and is a superwoman in her own right.
Thank you, Sarika. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's amazing being here. Love the brand and love FS Changemakers. So
we are
super stoked to be here.
We would really like to, start from the beginning, saying that you did your master's in English and history, and then you moved into marketing and communication. And how was that shift, and what made you do that shift? Like, was history an area of interest, or it was just something you took on and then moved? So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
So actually, Sarika, before I did history, I was actually a science student. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, and it took them extremely long to reconcile to the fact that I'm not going to be one. So I think after finishing class 12, I essentially just went and filled my form. And my mom's still extremely surprised at what made me just change my mind. I went alone. I just decided I'm done. I I don't want to be a doctor. Because all my life, I think probably I was 8 or 9 when I had decided that all I want to do is write and tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I had the option to sort of choose a stream of graduation, English and history essentially gave me that, the freedom to write and read, which is what I wanted. And then actually, interestingly, when I was looking for a job, one of my friends was working at indiatimes.com. This was like 22 years back. And they were, Times of India had just started this indiatimes.com. And at that point, we were going through what is called as a .com boom.
Yes.
There were websites cropping up. And folks who sort of worked during that time will tell you it was very cool to work for a .com at that point.
Yes.
So I remember
Hotmail, like really long.
Yes, absolutely. The Hotmail days.
Yes.
Yes. So I think I joined India Times. I started writing some of their features, and then I had a manager who moved to a telecom company, a large telecom company. And when I had joined India Times, within 3 months of working with her, she told me, wherever I go, I'm going to take you with me. So I just laughed it off. So she actually did that. She moved to the next job, and she just got me there. So this was my first exposure to really working in a corporate communications setup. I hadn't set out to do that with my life. I had no idea what does it even involve. So the fact that there is internal comm, there is marketing communications, you have external communications, you're looking at employee engagement, so a bunch of things, right? That's really where my journey started. At 8, I had no idea I'm a storyteller and a marketer at heart. But now when I look back, I can understand possibly this is what it meant, what I sort of wanted to do. So I think it seemed in my head, it seems like a very logical sort of transition from what I had always wanted to do. Most of the career choices I've made, be it moving into communications or marketing. I think one of the things which I've sort of learned over the years is as either as storytellers or marketers, what you need to remember is that there is a customer at the heart of it. And you're writing for or telling that story or creating that narrative for someone. So if you just keep that in mind, it gets replaced by an external customer or an internal employee. Things are more or less the same. They seamlessly marry each other. The only thing which I do, which is very, very different, is I also do CRM, which is just about numbers.
Yes.
So at that point, I think, yeah, it's I'm not sure what hat I put on, but it is an entirely different world in many ways.
So that's interesting.
Because
So how do you balance the two? Like, at one end you have to think very creatively and you have to put customer first and deep dive from multiple lenses and come out with a very creative output. Like the process is a creative process. And at the same time, you're also switching hats, and I'm sure you're juggling between the two multiple times during the day.
it's hard. I mean, I will not say that, okay, because uh, when you're also managing multiple teams, right, the questions you're asked are also so different. At one point, there's a copywriter or a marketing writer who's talking about, does this make sense for this kind of audience? And at the other end, you have somebody asking about how to optimize a campaign for a certain target group. What is a TG set you need to be looking at? Does this conversion make sense? So it's not hard. Funnily enough, both my teams have accused me. My creative team has said, you're too data oriented, and my data team has said, you're too creative. So I tell them, guys, I'm sorry, clearly I can't win both sides. So let's just assume there's a left brain, there's a right brain, and I'm the center. Let's just let's just go
That's a
with that.
beautiful way to put it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I tried to see also. The interesting part is, since there are multiple viewpoints I'm sort of managing and bringing together, I'm also able to get both sides to appreciate what the other side is saying and bringing to the table. Highly creative people saying, hey, but that doesn't matter. I mean, it needs to sound great, read great, resonate. But when I tell them, hey, resonation, what does a resonated customer do? Clicks, buys, engages, shares. There has to be some metric you're tracking. Similarly, I tell the folks who are just looking at data that if we don't experiment, we're just going to be stuck with one formula, which will eventually become old. So we need to have an open mind about experimenting with content formats. So I think I have to sort of be the adult in the conversation, bridging the gap between two worlds and say that left brain, right brain.
But moving forward, so just another thought is, because you've gone through in your 21 years of experience so many sectors, and then it's been marketing and communication and brand across and PR. And so how is it different for each sector, or is there, irrespective of the sector you're in, there is a certain thought process, or you have your own methodology that you follow that runs across, and which is your methodology, and you take that with you to every setup that you work with, and then weave it and fine tune it with what they are doing? So how does that work for you?
See, when you transition from sector to sector or industry to industry, it is hard. The first few months are hard because often enough, when you're setting up teams or leading a team, or even as an individual contributor contributing to a fairly, I mean, communications is a fairly challenging portfolio. The expectation is you're going to hit the road running. Usually, when you're hired, the first thing you're told is, hey, we're backfilling, there are 5 white papers, now we need this as of yesterday. So you really need to be quick on the uptake, quickly understand things. And I remember when I joined PhonePe, and I had been working for almost 17 years when I joined PhonePe, and payments was a completely new industry for me. I mean, and the first thing I remember I did was I wrote a blog post. And when I was writing my blog post, I was myself trying to figure out a lot on the digital payments because I had barely used digital payments myself. So I think it was hard. I still go through books of notes I would keep. I would actually physically sit and write down things which I understood post each meeting. So I would put in that preparation because specifically here, there were 3 or 4 teams I was setting up grounds up, and the stakes were really high. Even in some of my other jobs, I'd say I was doing pharma internal comms and PR. That was hard. You really need to understand the issue and you need to go deeply into each of those situations. And in telecom, when I was handling internal comms and external comms, you have to understand the telecom technology. I mean, it's hard. I'd not say that. I think a couple of things which help is one, you have to really quickly, I mean, you have a couple of weeks to sort of settle in. That's something you have to remember. Find the right mentor. Even if folks are unwilling to mentor you full time, just find somebody who understands the domain well and just stick to that person. I have seen that work beautifully in my life. Try and find somebody who can answer a lot of questions. Can be a colleague, can be somebody who's a business head. Steal some time and start understanding things quickly. read up as much as you can. The good thing is the internet has just made it so much easier. In my world, the media actually is a great teacher. A lot of them actually understand issues extremely deeply. When you talk to them, when you're bouncing off ideas, it also gives clarity to your own thought process on things. So I think you have to hit the road running. It's extremely exciting also, by the way, because when you starting a new job in a completely new industry it has its challenges, but it is also exciting because you're doing something completely new. I mean, it's your own playbook sort of goes out of the door in some ways. So I think it's fun in all in all. And I've also freelanced, by the way, for a very brief time, and that helped me because as you know, with freelancing, it's project to project.
Yeah, and you're on your own.
You're on your own. Yeah. So you just get a brief and you have to figure it out. You're writing about an education institute, a biotech company, and I remember an experiential marketing company. So every project used to be pretty different. I remember editing a book on machine learning. This was a while back.
Wow.
This was a very short, a year possibly I had freelance. But yeah, that also sort of tunes you to thinking differently, quickly, I guess.
Yeah. Does it help? Like, did it help when you were doing your own projects and then you went?
No, I found freelancing to be a great experience. I think if you want to become a writer or a marketer, it should, pardon my saying it, it should be compulsory.
Oh,
You
really?
should.
Why do you say that? Why do you say
Yes, it should, because it does teach you to see, I think, and specifically if you want to work for a startup, it helps you even more. There will be no structured briefs. Your roles and boundaries are not very clearly defined, and work needs to get done. For instance, if there's a white paper a complex white paper which needs to be written, in a startup world, you would quickly be given a brief, quick on the uptake, figure a lot of things, also possibly realize that the way we are thinking of it is not right. Along the way, you change your own brief. So I think freelancing does set you up for success in many ways if you can manage the uncertainty of bills not coming on time. Pardon my saying that. That's
okay, I
there is no dearth
on that.
there is no dearth of work. That, and I think the other thing which has possibly also helped me is I've worked when my kid was younger. I became a mom. I was working remotely from home for a very long time. Okay. So when I see the challenge and struggle folks have had right now, right, of feeling motivated about doing things or setting up a home office, I had dealt with them. It's a lonely life, and if you're a young mother, you're looking after your child and you're also managing your work, and you're making sure you're finding time for yourself. So I had that structure and discipline of being able to do it for a few years actually, which I think in the current scenario, the last 1.5 years has immensely helped me. I've found myself, because I had done it for a while, I knew what works, I knew what are the things you need to do. How do you switch off? Right. And I didn't have a toddler. I have a 16-year-old now. So I didn't have a constantly, I didn't have somebody constantly needing attention. So I think that switching off, being able to carve time for yourself, being able to set some boundaries
There's a team which works with you. So how did that translate out with the team?
I have a very diverse team, because since there are some people who are marketing writers, there are a bunch of people who are looking at CRM, there are a bunch of people who are actually PR managers who are looking at external comms. So these are like three fairly distinct teams. Some of them were hired during COVID.
So there's a gender and like inclusion chapter in PhonePe, which is you're coming on board. Would you like to talk about that a little bit, and how does that impact the organization? What was your thought around it? We also feel very strongly at Fable Street around inclusion and diversity in gender. So it just wanted to know how you've kind of put that together and how you feel about that.
So actually it started with, of course, Samir, who's our CEO, talking about being a more inclusive organization. And by the way, one of the things I just love about PhonePe is they've been, while we've actively started solving for it now, possibly behind the scenes, there was always an effort to at least have more representation for women across teams, including encouraging male managers to hire more women. So I think the conversation started with him initiating some of us who are function heads at PhonePe talking about solving for diversity and inclusion, uh, identifying what are the key metrics we want to take on. So, by the way, we've taken a hiring target here. We're
Okay.
saying by 2021, we are going to have 25% representation at director and above, which is essentially function and head and above, right at the senior most levels for women. So we are at 16% right now. 16% of our function heads are women, and by the end of this, we are going to actively solve for it. So we're going to hire more women in leadership. We are going to make this a place where women externally want to join, and our own leaders internally, right? Women who have potential, women in middle management. We're going to mentor them and going to take them to sort of higher levels. So I think this is a conversation we started having. And interestingly enough, on Women's Day, we had a chat with Samir and all the women leaders, and all of us shared our stories. And the best part for me is I've been working with some of my colleagues for years now. And so many men reached out and said, we spoke to our mothers, we showed them the videos, we spoke to our wives. Uh, we didn't know you would had these experiences. Now we understand how you must have felt, or your journeys have been interesting. So it's actually led to a wider conversation. It's not just women solving for women. We have men leaders, because face it, we still continue to have a majority of teams led by men, and we will need them to actively partner and solve for this. It cannot be a women problem or a women project. Unfortunately, most D&I initiatives fail because of that. It's a bunch of women who think of women and solve for women. So I think it's led to some extremely interesting conversations. So we're also solving for the LGBT and disabled folks. So we're looking at specific jobs which we can outsource. For LGBT, making a workplace which is a lot more inclusive. So for the women in leadership part, we've taken a target. For the other things, we're enabling a workplace which is first of all receptive to these conversations.
Yes.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting journey. I think when 5 of us sit down and talk, we have a weekly sync up. We just realize our own lives have been so different. I mean, from some who had extremely supportive parents, and some who've had very checkered careers. Some of us not very confident of being able to transition into leadership ourselves. So we are facing our own doubts and insecurities. So I think it's been a learning for us as well. I mean, it's been an amazing learning for me.
That's
So
fascinating.
I'm extremely excited. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any particular conversation or instance, if you can share, that stands out for you, or stood out for you during this process of when you were putting this chapter together, or a conversation that you had?
I think two things that stood out for me was, one, contrary to what we believe, a lot of my colleagues have been working for 15 plus years. They spoke about very supportive organizations. My experience, unfortunately, has not, it's been across the board. Some organizations were extremely supportive, some were not.
Okay.
You had to fight your way and make your way, right? So a lot of them have had extremely supportive organizations which have sort of, been open to the idea of welcoming more women, etc., which was a surprise. I think across the board, everybody spoke about the 3 M's, as we put it: marriage, maternity, and mobility, being a big make or break for most women. I think that was across the board. Most of us, anybody who's sort of transitioned from a middle management to a senior role has had to navigate this in some form.
Yeah.
So So, and the third, I think, interestingly, in my case, what I realized was, when we started working, some of my managers were incredibly supportive, very nice, but making a very casual sexist statement was very commonplace, which is changed now, and I'm so glad about it. To tell you, to tell somebody on their face that, hey, you'll get married and you leave, was very, very normal. I mean, 25 years back, I wouldn't have, if I was interning, I wouldn't even have battled an iron. I would have been like, sure, this is par for the course.
Yeah.
You need to take this. But now I think the vocabulary and how you communicate has really changed, which is really good. I'm glad about it. No complaints. So.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that there is a transition. I see it around, and I think there is still a lot more to be done in the space, and
yes,
a lot more
absolutely.
mindsets need to change. Moving from here and going back to talking a little bit about your communications and communication style. because then nowadays there's so many touch points. Earlier it was traditional media, and there was print and TV and maybe radio and leaflets, or there were restricted forms of communication. In today's day and age, when they're 360-degree, when you have to run a 360-degree campaigns, and you have to touch base across, like, I don't know, like 10, 12, 15 different formats, conversations. And there are new ones coming every day, like I hear of Clubhouse, and then there's more. What are the 2-3 things that you keep in mind? How do you decide what's priority and what should you keep in mind and not keep in mind? But
when I'm talking to my own customers, I focus on own media a lot. I don't want to spend externally talk to my own customers. It doesn't make sense for me. And I have a huge base. We're talking about 110 million monthly active users. So it's massive. Yeah. And what we try and do, even when we are setting up our CRM, right? I personally am a big believer. Again, we get into massive disagreements with business teams sometimes on less is more. I don't think we need to bombard customers with a lot of messages. It needs to make sense. It needs to be targeted. It needs to be at the right time. Onboarding is extremely important, especially when you're looking at own media. You need to onboard your customers right and take them through the journey of transitioning from trying various categories to repeating to various categories to cross-sell, etc. I think in your own media that matters. When I'm doing external communication, specifically PR, the world has actually gone digital first. While print has its fans, and also print has a lot of credibility. But at the same time, digital mediums tend to catch news first. So a lot of news is actually tailored for that. We make sure we hit the wires and then sort of do longer and lengthier pieces with some of the print publications. So at a very basic level, those are some of the things we try and keep in mind. We also we're multilingual. So we try vernacular communication. The blogs are multilingual. Some of our notifications and pages are multilingual. Our help is multilingual. So we do, considering there are multiple languages people use the app in, it makes more sense for them to get help and marketing communication in a language which they understand. So we consciously try and make sure we sort of make this more inclusive when we are talking to customers.
Okay, that is interesting. Moving away from just work and professional context, if we have to talk about you as an individual, right? What is it that you like doing? What is it that's when you have to kind of switch off or do your downtime or take your time out, because I know the schedules are hectic. Who are you? We would love to know you a little bit as a person.
I read a lot. So I think if you like writing, that just comes naturally. You should read a lot. You should read different kinds of. I unfortunately stick to fiction most of the time, but I try and read a varied bit when it comes to that. I like writing. I've been forever thinking of starting my blog. I used to blog a lot 10 years back. This was a fun blog I used to write, and I want to go back to that non-work writing. Not when I'm not talking about PR or CRM. I'm just talking about my life in general.
Is
and
it
I think when you're
something which is still running.
Pardon me.
Is it still an active?
No, unfortunately, it's I've stopped updating it. Though I've had colleagues in PhonePe read it and tell me, "Hey, why did you stop?" I said, "I just ran out of material. My son grew up.
Yeah.
When he was younger, I think there was so much fun I was having as a first-time parent that I would just keep, it was a very good way to vent also is how I felt. So I do a lot of work writing now, but would like to get to non-work writing. I have musical ambitions, which my family just doesn't let me fulfill. They tell me too loud. We don't like the song. Go to the balcony. I'm studying. So there's a singer somewhere who needs to come out of the bathroom. I'm hoping that happens.
Family will never say that, oh, you're singing well. They'll always make fun of you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I'm sure the timing will appreciate you a lot when you're singing. So
yeah, so I think the timing, unfortunately, is never right. I used to write a lot of scripts when I was in school and college. I was thinking I should get back to it. The last one I did was with at my son's school, and I remember it was well appreciated. So I there was a point in life I actually wanted to become a script writer. I thought
That's
this is
fascinating.
just the yeah, this is the coolest thing to do. I used to love writing scripts. I remember. I think I bunked all of my 11th and 12th medical coaching and wrote scripts. My parents don't know that. I spent 2 years just doing that. So I think I'd like to get to doing that. It's extremely interesting developing characters and
Like, how do you balance? Is there a work-life balance? We all talk about work-life balance, but is there a work-life balance?
I just shamelessly switch off. I mean, on weekends, if I need to steal time for myself, I've been accused of not doing any household chores. I say forget it. It's all right. We'll order in. The house can be dirty for a day or two. It's fine. I'm reading. I'm just not getting up. See, because otherwise you're in this constant mode of work needs attention, home needs attention, family needs attention. Now your home needs to be cleaned up, and you just need to let go.
Yeah, and you want to
There
be
are
perfect at everything, right? Like that's the expectation from your own self, actually. Sometimes, yeah.
yeah, of course. I think most perfectionists and whatever type A people, we have 10 balls in our hand and we're making sure. So I think I've realized, I think it's this wisdom just comes much later in life. I've gone through this phases of just overdoing things. Even if there's work writing which needs some uninterrupted time, I prefer doing it on weekends when I'm actually actively thinking of that. If
Mm.
there's an article I need to write, I'd rather do it on the weekend when I'm free from other distractions. And I'm writing. I mean, I just want to write. I think I make sure at least in a couple of hours a week I'm just writing, even if it's for work. It's important because I think unless you do that, you just lose touch of being able to do this quickly, efficiently, etc. And also different formats. I mean, there are so many newer formats which are coming up, right? I didn't know what a notification was till I joined Flipkart. I'd never written one.
Okay.
So
During the week, is there some sense of a balance, or the week is very work oriented and defined? Your hours are completely at work, and then you get a weekend. I mean, how do you segregate the
I
two?
steal time. For instance, if I have a half an hour between meetings, I just wear my shoes and go for a walk. Or I go for a run. It's all right because that's possibly one of the perks of working from home.
Mm.
It's a 20-minute break. Just take it.
Mm.
Wear your shoes and just go for run for 5 rounds, or just take a break. It's very important because otherwise, and as I said, since I'd worked from home earlier, I was used to taking out these small cheap times for myself.
Yeah.
I see folks just stuck from 9 to 9 and they're like, oh God, we're in pajamas, we're doing nothing, we're just working. I think just find that 20 minutes of me time. I don't watch too much of digital content, maybe
So no
Netflix,
Netflix.
and yeah, very little. I think that's also possibly gives me the luxury of these cheat hours.
Yeah.
So I do that throughout my day. You actually work better. I mean, you just notice, you start thinking more clearly. If you've had a very, very heated discussion with somebody, you actually ping him and say, hey, forget it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wrap
Let's
it
move
up.
on. Let's move on. I'm just so not worth it. So just works.
Great. There's also, we have this FS Changemaker conversation that we would like to know what is a defining moment in your life. That anything, it could be a small incident, it could be something just somebody said, it could be something you read. If you would like to share a story.
Yeah, sorry. It was in my second job where I was actually hired to do internal communications. And in my conversations, I just realized that, there was a gap which existed in the way we were overall communicating as an organization. So when we were talking to the external world, especially the PR we were doing, and we used to talk to a lot of American media at that point. This was a telecom company, which was basically building solutions for the US market. So there weren't any articles or white papers which existed on what we did. So I realized, hey, this is a gap. I took this on. I was not hired to do that at all. I realized this is a project which needs work on. figured it out on my own. As I said, found mentors over tea, coffee, lunches who were willing to give me a brief on how I should be thinking of these white papers, and started writing them. And these were fairly complex white papers. Typically, internal comms folks, we slot them. That hey, they won't be able to write such complex stuff. But in my case, I think one of the things I've always done is I've not shied away from complexity. I think that's really helped me in my life. Don't shy away from taking up something because it seems complex. The worst is you'll fail once or twice, but you'll learn. That's all right. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, perfect. It takes a while. Though fortunately, in that case, I was once I was done with the white papers, they were highly appreciated. We started getting a lot of media coverage. Made me realize two things. One, don't stick to your job description. Even here, I think in my current job, I voluntarily contribute to a lot of conversations which don't have to be in my job description. And I tell younger people in my team that it's all right. I've hired you to do that, but you should be contributing to other conversations. It helps you. It helps you grow. It helps you get noticed. And don't shy away from complexity. I think that is extremely important. As communicators, most of us try and stick to the tried and tested. ये तो हुआ ही नहीं है. Oh, this has never been done. Will this work? Should we be thinking of this differently? Then you sort of limit yourself over and over. So I think for me that was a big change, because here I was a young person. This was a large organization. Was hired to do something. Decided to take on something else. Figured it out and was able to get the right impact. Once you've had success once, it also defines what your career becomes eventually. Yeah. So in some ways, the fact that it was successful gave me the confidence that it's fine. I can speak up, take on more, take on roles which are very diverse. So it doesn't matter. I don't need to stick to what my job description is. I think that's really, really helped me in life.
Yeah, I think that's you put it very beautifully, of not trying to run away from complex situations or challenges or anything that you take on, because we very, very intuitively, we are all wired to kind of saying, oh, this looks difficult or this is complex. The first reaction is to kind of say no, or step back from it, or not try it at all. So I think that's a very beautiful thought. So this is in the workspace domain. Is there a moment which was a defining moment for you in your personal capacity?
So I think I'd say I spoke about it briefly. The fact that I just decided to work from home for a while when I became a parent. I have an incredibly supportive family, and my husband actually told me, go back. It's all right. We'll figure it out. So I was actually able to carve out and find a role which allowed me to do what I like, but at the same time do it largely from home. I think at that point, I was 27 when I had my kid. It just seemed like the end of the world because, as I said, working from home just tends to get very lonely.
Yeah.
You have to set up systems, processes of your own. You also have everybody else is in office. You're the only one who's working remotely, and in some ways you're left out.
Yeah, it's isolating. It's isolating.
It tends to get very isolating. It's lonely out there. But I was able to find ways and means to sort of stay connected with a larger team. And as I said, this really, really helped me in the current pandemic because I just realized there were, as I said, I'm able to find small bursts of me time. I'm able to keep the rest of the folks in the team cheerful because I've done it. It's not that hard. So I think that's really helped me. If I look back in retrospect, when I used to otherwise think of it, I used to always think of it as the bad, not so great period in my career. Was sort of stuck at home, but now when I look at it, it's taught me so many skills. Even multitasking. I mean, for that matter, any parent who's managed work, home, and a young kid will tell you this is.
I think most parents are now.
Everything is a cakewalk. Yeah, everything is a cakewalk. When you're juggling a 2-year-old having a tantrum, you're doing these Zoom calls. I was doing these Zoom calls 10 years back. So this was BAU for me. I mean, I had a kid sitting next to me, playing with his toys while I would be doing a call. I would be muting every time he would yell. So I was just so used to it.
Yeah, That time would have been harder because now at least it's a lot more accepted. They're more gentle about, suddenly a kid walking in a Zoom call, right? Because everybody
Yeah.
is going through it. But at that time, if it was just you going through it, it would be,
Yes.
in my mind, slightly harder to manage than what it is today. And you would have had to deal with that.
And see, when you're younger, I think you're less thick-skinned. Now that I'm older, I'm also possibly a lot more thick-skinned about something like that. It would bother me at that point. Hey, the kid yelled when I was making a point. So, but that's how kids are. I mean, obviously they yell. So yeah, it was. Yeah, so that was a huge learning experience. I'd say has changed me as a person, changed how I saw work, how I navigated the current work environment. I do think it's helped me a lot in retrospect.
So Priya, this has been great. What I'm going to do is do a small, like a quick rapid fire. So who are the 3 Indian women that you look up to?
I look up to Indra Nooyi. She's the PepsiCo person, and I mean, of course, Geeta Gopinath. She's in a profession which is a tough one, and I look up to the Fable Street women. I love you guys. I love
I'm glad to hear that. I'm sure everybody else.
what you guys. I love what you guys are doing. I said I love your brand, and I'm not saying this because I have to say this. Absolutely kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. So what are your top 5 wardrobe staples?
I'm a t-shirt person, and today I'm not wearing one because I'm wearing my favorite Fable Street top. And I have on occasion said I can work for t-shirts, so I just hold on them. And one of the advantages when you have a teenager is you can just borrow his.
Okay.
So
He may not like
so
that.
there are so there are t-shirts, an unending stream of what is called track bottoms and pajamas, and I love skirts and I love wearing dresses, and I love stuff which is tailored well. So in general, those would be my top 5 staples. I'm a sucker for anything which has cotton written on it. 100% cotton, just I'm sold. I don't even look beyond that. So it's a weakness.
You dress up when you're like,
I hate being dowdy. I mean, for me it's a wasted day. So even if I'm wearing pajamas, I make sure I have a ritual of ironing my clothes and sort of getting ready for work. So possibly comes from the fact that, as I said, I've worked from home for a fairly long time. I know what it gets like. So I hate not being in office mode, whatever it is. So I dress for comfort when I'm working from home, but I do make sure I'm dressed for work.
any message or advice you have for anybody wanting to make a career in communication or marketing?
So I think one thing, it's irrespective of what you're doing, you should challenge the status quo. I say this all the time. I see a lot of us falling in the trap of this has never been done and this cannot be done and this should not be done. Challenge the status quo, especially if you're a communicator and marketer. You have to think out of the box. Just because it's been done is no reason why it needs to be done. So I think continuously challenge the status quo, think of different ways of doing things. That also challenges you. So most playbooks outlive their lives. Move on, create your own playbooks.
Great. Great. So, Priya, this has been great. We've been very glad to session. We've got a lot of insights from you. So, would like to thank you for coming on board. And
Thank you, Sarika. Thank you for having me. It was absolutely lovely chatting with you.